Well, today is certainly about optimization. Shouldn't every day be about optimization? I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. We're going to talk about a copy optimization approach. This is critical to your ability to increase sales and generate more leads. Now, whether you're doing this for yourself or you're doing it for your clients, it's critical for you to understand where to start optimizing your website. Now, I'm going to cover this very quickly. It's a list I put together this morning, and I think it'd be very valuable to you if you take notes. So the big idea is you don't need to write more copy, because when you write copy that converts, you learn something. And now every piece of copy is building upon the successes of your previous copy. It's building on your lessons learned. And now as a copywriter, what we recommend is that you focus on a particular audience base. Like, for example, I focus on affluent families, families that have strong ethical foundations, that like the outdoors, and that ultimately are curious about improving themselves. So for example, as copywriters, you want to build a business that gives you freedom and flexibility. Some of you guys are sitting at the beach writing copy. That's okay. Some of you have a little cabin out in the woods like Hemingway. The key is that you're typically not broke. You're typically not illiterate. You're typically not well, you might be chasing the latest thing, but ultimately you're going to learn a skill, and then you're going to apply that skill in service of your customers. And that's what makes you a good client to me. So I don't need to write you more copy. You're busy. I don't need to send out the latest podcast or the latest new article, because you got things to do. There's no shortage of stuff to read. We're all swamped with information overload. So if you want to optimize your copy, you start with the purchase transaction. That's tip number one. You want to start with your purchase transaction, then lead generation. So let me explain how this works. Number one, you're going to make sure your Google Analytics or whatever analytics tool you're using functions so that when there's a transaction, you know where the sale came from, where the lead came from, where all this stuff happened from, the path they took to make the purchase, all that. It doesn't matter whether they buy online or offline. You want to know how many sales were by telephone, how many sales were by mail, how many sales were by your website, how many sales were based on your catalog. Now, you might be saying, Justin, why don't you get up to date? This is the modern world. We all have the interwebs. We're all using commerce platforms. Well, that's only 1/3 of where your sales could come from. If something works as an email to generate sales, it will likely work as a letter. Now, formatting is going to be different, but you got to have a list. So after you got your conversion tracking clean, you want to start getting your lead tracking clean, and then start appending your actual mailing list. So if you've got somebody's email and they've purchased from you, and they purchased a digital product because it's got no overhead, well, you're missing out on the postal address and being able to follow up with them now in 2 different mediums. Do you see how this works? You can follow with them online, which they may or may not get the email. And then you can send them a postcard or a letter or a prospect newsletter or something else to set them up for a high ticket service. Now, if you're selling trinkets, if you're like a street vendor and you got a bunch of t-shirts and you've got a bunch of little trinkets and there's no back end. So Neiman Marcus sells t-shirts, but they got a back end. Macy's sells t-shirts at 50% off at times, but they got a back end. Then you really, without that back end, you're going to end up with no sales and no leads. But again, get the leads. Next, you want to design for meaningful tests and experiments. You want a systematic approach. Okay, so we're not throwing spaghetti against the wall. We're not burning our lists. Very often in the back in the olden days, when you had to rent a list, I would rent a list, and I only got one chance to mail that list. Now I could get a list of 10,000 names, and I could mail cells of 1,500, because I didn't have the money to get giant lists. I wasn't mailing 100,000 mailings. I'm mailing like 1,500 mailings. I'd get a list of 5,000 or 10,000 names, depending on what's going on and what are the minimums. I might pay what's equivalent today to $75 per thousand, or $175 per thousand. And then what I would do is I would send A/B splits. I'd set the list up, and I'd send 1,500 to this cell and 1,500 to this cell, and then whichever campaign was best would go again. If they were not statistically relevant responses, then I might send the 2 cells again. but in over a month period, I would only get to mail the list one time because these lists were seeded and stuff, and they knew how many times I'm mailing it. And I often had to get the creatives approved. And when I got the creatives approved, somebody would tell me, I don't think this one's going to work. Well, they know their list better than I do, so I would make adjustments accordingly unless I've tested it elsewhere. But the key that you have to understand is that if you're only online and you're only testing online, how do you really know that Facebook is better than Twitter or Instagram is better than TikTok? Well, you have to test and build the tests. And then what if there's overlap of the users? What if you are wasting money because you are not audience matching the buyers and you're audience matching everybody that visits? Well-structured and organized campaigns think about these things. They think about lead cannibalization. They think about whether or not the cookies are going to work, whether or not the click-throughs are properly coded, because all that stuff matters. Now, that's even before you get to the website. That's before. Think about that. That's while it's out on the ad platform. And you might be saying, well, Justin, I'm not on an ad platform. Well, you got descriptions on your YouTube videos, right? You should put a link in there. Put a little call to action. Put a link. You've got, Facebook posts with links back to the website. Properly code it. You'll know what the hell's going on. Number 3, you want to test headlines, feature images, hooks, but not all at the same time. Like there's like 50 things you can test on a web page, like a landing page or an opt-in. Now, a lot of you folks are using content marketing, so you have a large number of posts on the site. The headline, featured image, and hooks are good to test there too. But again, if you have 50, 60, 70 tests in place, now my team can take care of that because that's what we do. But if you're the copywriter and you're the marketing analytics guy and you're the project manager and you're the person the editorial manager, somebody's going to blow their brains out. And I'm not joking or making light of suicide. If you've got problems like that, you need to talk to somebody because that's a colloquialism about how difficult something would be, but it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. The temporary problem is that you didn't put a systematic approach to the campaigns. If you've got 99 problems, you can fix one of those problems. Now you got 98 problems. And if you keep working on it, you'll eventually you'll have new problems, but you'll at least have the skills to address it. So again, testing the headlines. Now, like I say, on number 4 here, we want to focus on the A/B splits. We want to narrow our testing scope so that we start our campaigns with a clear scope of our testing. And we write it down. Now, by the way, this is exactly the same for control validation in a risk management world where we're testing privacy policies of a marketing department or the anti-money laundering controls. It's all the same. We come up with a test scope. We gather the data, which we're going to get from our analytics tools in the marketing world. We validate the data to make sure it is the accurate data for the scope that we're looking at. And then we test it. We see whether or not the data tells us that we're complying with our objectives, which in the marketing world is sales and leads, or we're not. And then it speaks for itself. We don't have to guess because we did a test and we know what works and what doesn't work. But again, if you're testing what's called multivariate testing, you're going to need more impressions or more unique visitors. And a lot of the folks out there don't have that. So what kind of numbers are we looking at? Well, we can have an okay test with 100 actions. So it means if you do an A/B split and you can generate 100 leads on either one of those, that's enough to kind of give you an idea. You don't want to stop the campaign there, but you can punch in the number of impressions versus the number of leads for side A and number of impressions, number of leads for side B. You can put that in a calculator online and it'll tell you whether the probability is high enough that will continue. That's all you really got to do. However, if you have 15 different variables being tested or even 4 different variables, if you've got 4 different variables, you have to do that 16 times to know which of those variables was the best variable. So do you want to do it twice or do you want to do it 16 times? And it's 3, it's 9 times. And so if you're going to do testing matrices and stuff like that, I'm expecting you to have like 100,000 impressions on that page. And even then, with the testing tools, it still take about 30 days to get a test through. Now, if you have a list of 250,000 names, you don't want to email 250,000 names something you don't know that's going to work. So again, you're going to do an inth select, take a sample of that list, and then take another sample of that list, and then send A versus B. Now, A versus B could be completely different, but then you're going to swap the cells. And so A over here is A1, B over here is B1, and now you've got B1 as the second in the series for A1 and A1 second in the series for B1. And if that doesn't make sense, you need to hire somebody like me who can draw it out in a diagram for you, because otherwise you're going to end up sending campaigns and not really knowing what works and what doesn't. Once you get a campaign that's statistically relevant, meaning it has a high probability of repeatability, then you're going to incrementally roll it out. And then by the time you reach the end of the list, you'll know exactly what works and what doesn't. And then you can start adding on to that product. You can do a follow-up of all the buyers to offer an upsell. You can start segmenting again. And this is really going to give you a really clean list. It's going to give you not only a list that has accurate information on it, but it's going to give you a list where you can just look at what works. That's a binder that I usually put together for clients that is kind of the testing observations. And then you can just go out there and say, okay, A versus B. It's actually a decision tree, which I've shown in another video. If you have questions about it, just write my office. I'll draw a picture for you and send it over. But that's really what you need to do. It's just A versus B, A versus B, A versus B. If you have the traffic, God bless you. And may the multivariate work for you, but still it's only like 2 or 3 variants. You're not going to do like 15 different things and get any meaningful result. All right, the last thing that you need to make any of this stuff work. And I got 10 things on this list, by the way. If you want a copy of this list, let me know. I will literally copy this list to a PDF file and send it to you. But you need to have clean lead and sales attribution. That is the one thing I harp on. Whether you got a link from a joint venture partner, whether you got it from a social media platform, whether you got it from your regular newsletter, I want to know whether if it's a third-party platform sending you traffic, I want to know what creative it was, what medium or what platform it was, and I want to know what campaigns it's associated with. Now, there's more information that you can gather, but these 3 things are going to help you know where the lead came from. Now, your lead opt-in forms need to be properly functioning in order to pass that attribution along to your analytics tool. And your analytics tool has to know it's a lead and flag it accordingly. And then your thank you page needs to have the proper cookies on it so that you can tag people who opted in for same audience matching in these different platforms. But all those moving parts have to be functioning. And what I use is checklists. And of course, my technical team takes care of most of that. I support that technical team from time to time as I like to get familiar with the new tools that are available, because when you combine the marketing with appropriate use of the tools, and you add somebody like my organization in the back end that can take care of the tools for you, that can keep the customer's website clean, then you'll know what copy works and what copy doesn't. There's all kinds, SEMrush, for example, Ahrefs, Moz. There's a lot of platforms out there that can start giving you, especially with AI today, can start giving you predictive content for topics, like content topics, for what makes leads, what makes sales. And then you can start structuring your content so that you know what content to put out in the public to generate leads, what content to put on your website in the public to generate leads, what kind of content to put on your public in the website for sales, and then ultimately what back-end offers work and what don't. It is better to have 2 or 3 products that you know work versus creating that next product, creating that next product, creating that next product, creating that next product. It wears me out just thinking about it. And so I'm going to end it there. This is about a copy optimization approach. And you notice I didn't say anything about the copy. All the stuff in the sales letter is valuable, but if it's not properly coded from a technical perspective, then you don't know whether the sales letter converted for list A or it converted for list B. And then there's all kinds of things that can break it when it comes to cookies and stuff. If we take care of that stuff for you, then you're going to have better marketing campaigns, better attributions. Your clients are going to know the EPCs, the earnings per click or the earnings per thousand. And then you'll be able to do the math to know whether or not you're making any money, because you're going to know cost per lead, cost per sale, profit per sale. You're going to know by channel. Okay. For the dollars you put into Google Analytics, does the Google Analytics, for the dollars you put into Google AdSense, do the Google AdSense console and conversions match what's in Google Analytics? And then does it match what goes in your bank account? That matters tremendously. And that's where we specialize. Again, I like to see you get it to an agency model, and then you can bring in people that help you with these things while you're helping customers write copy that sells, to write lead generation pieces, to write the next email follow-up. We don't want clients splashing it against the wall. We want clients taking whatever they invest in you and putting it against their marketing budget, and then eventually paying you more money than they're spending on advertising because you help them build a house list. You help them build a model for creating and keeping profitable customers. So I'm going to leave it there. My screensaver came on. I'm having technical difficulties. This is the third recording I've done so far here, just trying to catch up on the materials that I've produced. If you have any questions about what I've created today, what I've shared with you today on optimization, if you've got questions about how to position yourself in the marketplace or even write better copy, visit me, Justin Hitt, at www.adbriefings.co.uk, where you can go to the contact page and ask your questions. I just love getting questions. It's pretty cool. I like answering your questions. I hope you like it too. Or you can join our free email newsletter. Now, folks that are on the podcast as a subscriber, and those who are on the free email newsletter as a subscriber, and my paid subscribers who get a lot more value than what you're getting here, because we can deep dive into their individual businesses, all of you guys can ask questions in a group coaching call. I'm not going to put a link down here. You got to go to www.adbriefings.co.uk, and you got to go to the contact page, and you'll see information about the group coaching sessions. Now, I just started that back up, so it's possible you're going to get on a call with just you and me, and you can pick my brain. Now, these calls are recorded, and some of them become podcasts. Just disclosing that right up front. But again, we've been talking about copy optimization approaches that start at the purchase and work their way back to the lead or to the audiences, the target publications and networks that you can now just do ads and make money. That's how it works. All this waiting for organic traffic and the proper keyword and the SEO, none of that matters. If you can grab somebody by the arm, put them in front of your sales letter, they're interested in reading it because you have a good match, and then they make a decision. Are they going to buy or are they not going to buy? Sales and leads, babies. That's how it works. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefings Copywriting Tips, and I'll see you in the next podcast.